May 13th, 2010. The small city of Guthrie in Oklahoma. It was a Thursday nearing the end of the week, and everyone was slowly trickling out of their houses and heading off to work and school. But just before 8 a.m, a 911 call came in from 402 West Orbit Drive, a call that threw the usually quiet neighborhood into chaos. The person on the phone was 15-year-old Lewy Fryer.
911.
My dad's dead.
Hey, where's this at?
My house. There's blood everywhere. I can't go in there.
Who's your dad's name?
Lewy Fryer. He didn't wake me up in the morning. His car's gone. Everything's gone.
Is there blood? You said there's blood everywhere?
Yes, there's blood all over the floor. I tried to wake him up, and he didn't wake up.
I have him en route, okay?
Yes.
Stay calm, okay?
I've never seen a dead body before.
Kaylee had found her father, 50-year-old Lewy Fryer, known to everyone as Louie, dead in his bedroom. It looked like it was a home invasion gone horribly wrong. Things were smashed and his car had been stolen from off the driveway. Police got to the house and found the grisly scene. Blood absolutely covered the bedroom walls, floor, bed frame and door. Louie had clearly been dead for a few hours. The room was in total disarray and Louie had put up a fight. He was covered in defensive wounds. He had stab wounds to his neck and back. The murder weapon had been a knife from inside his own kitchen, and it now appeared to be missing from the spot in the knife rack. His blankets were still wrapped around him as he had fallen out of bed and onto the floor, and the position of the blood in the bed told investigators he was likely asleep when his killer started attacking him. He didn't see or hear anything coming until he was fighting for his life. It had been Louie, Kaylee and her 18-year-old brother Keith for the last 13 years. Louie and his ex-wife Tricia had split in 1997 as her life had sadly spiralled into drug addiction. She was going in and out of prison and Louie was given full custody, but he encouraged the kids to see her even more than the courts granted. He wanted them to keep as good a relationship with her as they could. Keith said their dad was their constant, a stand-up parent. He did everything for them. In between looking after two now teenage kids, he worked as a designer for a picture framing company. He was a big sports fan and had loved fishing from a young age. Friends said he was just an all-round salt-of-the-earth guy with a great sense of humour. At 402 West Orbit Drive, Kaylee sat in the police car with detectives keeping her from contaminating anything, and the crime scene examiners combed through the Fryer house. She said she couldn't think of anyone who would want to do this to him. Everyone likes my dad, she said.
Now, who would want to kill your dad?
I don't know.
Is he in the enemies?
No. Everybody likes my dad.
The 15-year-old said nothing out of the ordinary had happened that night. They'd spent the evening together eating dinner and watching a film, and at about 10:30 p.m. they both went to bed. She'd slept through the whole night and heard nothing, waking up at 7 a.m. She said normally her dad would wake her up for school, but the house was so silent, no sounds of the TV or him making breakfast. She went looking for him and had walked right into the awful scene in his room. As they looked around, they noticed there were no signs of a forced entry. No locks were damaged and no windows were broken. It looked as if the killer had got in through an unlocked door and then escaped out of the back door, as there was a tiny amount of blood on there. As with all cases, you look at the people closest to the victim, often a partner or an ex. So they turned their attention to his ex-wife Tricia. Police had to consider the possibility that maybe this was over custody, Although initially a little hard to get hold of, she voluntarily came in for an interview, and it was obvious she was nothing to do with it. Tricia was happy for Lewy having full custody given everything going on in her life. She was grateful to him, and all things considered, they had a very amicable relationship. There was simply no motive there at all. Kaylee then revealed that a few days before, her older brother Keith had left the house after having a fight at school, which had caused an argument with their dad. Lewy had always made it clear that the minute either of them turned 18, there would be adult consequences for things, and getting into a physical fight at school was one of those things. He was disappointed in his son, and he said he needed to leave the house. Keith went to stay with a friend, but everyone knew it was only a temporary thing. Lewy said he would of course welcome him back if he accepted responsibility and didn't do anything like that again. So could this be a potential motive? They headed to Guthrie High School and detectives escorted Keith into the principal's office, where he was informed of his dad's passing. His reaction was raw and genuine. He had no idea what had happened. He started screaming that they were lying. Getting so angry and upset, he threw his chair against the wall. He was heartbroken, especially with this all happening after several days of them not speaking and being in a good place. Keith was also ruled out when his friends confirmed he was with them all night. He hadn't been near the house in days. His car was the next thing to look at. They put out a be on the lookout for it, but it had now been 8 hours since it was stolen, so it could be a big hunt. Police scoured the neighbourhoods and talked to those who knew the Fryer family. He hadn't even had so much as a minor dispute with a colleague, let alone have anyone that might want to do this. But one thing they could now rule out was robbery. The crime scene did not point to this being a random attack. There was no break-in, Kaylee had been left unharmed, and despite his bedroom being a mess, nothing apart from the car had been taken. And it seemed that that was more for a getaway, rather than wanting to get any money for it. 2 of Kaylee's friends then asked to talk to the police, and what they said would change the course of the investigation. They revealed that Kaylee had in recent years become rebellious to the point where Lewy couldn't control her at all. She was drinking a lot and taking drugs, throwing parties when her dad wasn't home and getting into fights. She'd been expelled multiple times and hadn't been in school for months. Kaylee was not somebody you wanted to mess with. People knew if it came down to do it, she wouldn't be afraid to throw hands or get in someone's face, her friend Gina said. Lewy had been trying to change things and be stricter with curfews and rules, but Kaylee hated it and was refusing to play ball. Kaylee's diary was discovered in her room, and she had written multiple entries about how much she hated her dad. One entry even read, "You're dead to me." She had recently gotten it into her head that if she went to live with her mother, she would be able to get away with more and just do what she wanted. And one thing that just hadn't sat well with the police since the start of the investigation was how had Kaylee slept through such a violent attack. A huge fight, things had been broken, her dad likely shouting for help, and then his car speeding away. It seemed impossible. Even her brother Keith couldn't stop thinking about it, and he didn't know what had happened, but he knew something wasn't right. He said when Kaylee and his mother had come to the school to pick him up, he could tell that Kaylee knew more than she was letting on. As soon as I saw Kaylee's face, I just knew she was lying about something, and I was immediately suspicious. I told her I didn't want to talk to her, and I felt physically sick, he said. He added, as children, my sister and I were like partners in crime and would sneak out together, but as we grew older, we grew apart, and she began to go off the rails, drinking and taking drugs. I tried to speak to her about it, but she wouldn't listen, and she definitely had mental health issues her entire life. She didn't like being told what to do, and she was a problem from an early age. We all knew she had a dark side. She was quick to fight anyone and could fly off the handle. There had definitely been issues between father and daughter, and although Kaylee was the only person they could find that had any real problems with Lewy, they still didn't believe that physically this was something she would be able to do, but they believed she knew who his killer was. Her friends were able to point the police in a new direction. Kaylee had had a 21-year-old boyfriend for a few months, Jerry Jerome Childs Jr., known as Jay. He had no current address, no job and no money, so Kaylee would often sneak him into their house during the night, and some sources say Jay was even married at the time. Despite her efforts to hide him, Lewy ended up finding out about Jay. He confronted Kaylee and made it very clear he did not want them seeing each other, nor was he ever welcome in his home. It would never be something he would condone. The following day, he found and confronted Jay as well as he was walking around their neighborhood, and Lewy told him the same thing. In the state of Oklahoma, their age difference meant a sexual relationship between the two of them violated statutory rape laws. And with this, they now had much more of a motive. But without a set address, they knew finding Jay would prove difficult. They finally got a hit on the Be on the Lookout for the car. It had been abandoned in Oklahoma City. It had some damage on it and the keys were still inside. Nothing of evidentiary value was found elsewhere, however. No murder weapon or DNA. Shortly after this, 21-year-old Jay was located in Oklahoma City as well. He had called a friend asking for a lift home. He said he was stuck there and had no way of getting back. Thanks to the friend, she convinced him to stay where he was, let the police come and get him, and voluntarily participate in an interview. He told the investigators he had absolutely nothing to do with the murder at all, but eventually he admitted he was at the Fryer home that night after Kaylee snuck him in. He said Lewy had woken up, found the pair together, and tried to attack him with a golf club in the hallway. Jay had grabbed a knife in the kitchen in self-defense. Authorities let him talk a while longer. They already knew from the bloodstain evidence in the bedroom that Lewy had been killed in bed. His feet were up against the closet, which was where his golf clubs were stored, and the clubs clearly hadn't been used for a while. They sat there collecting dust. There was no blood in the hallway where Jay said the fight broke out. It was all contained to the bedroom, so self-defense of any sort, it was clearly not. Then Jay changed his story and said he had gone to the home to rob Lewy, but when he woke up, Jay panicked and stabbed him. This story still didn't make any sense. They pushed him more, and he finally admitted that Kaylee had convinced him to kill her father, and they had carried out the plot together. She had not been in the room, but she had told him exactly what to do, what time, and where to find the knife. He said Kaylee had begged him many times to kill her dad, but he had always refused. That was until the 15-year-old dropped a bombshell and told Jay she was pregnant with his child. Billy Wheeler, the Guthrie City attorney, said everything Kaylee pitched as a plan would have made perfect sense to Jay. This is somebody that's been kicked out of his house, and Kaylee offers him a plan. They're going to live with her mother, they're going to be happy, they're going to have a place to live, and this just offers him something he can't turn down, he said. After Kaylee and Lewy went to bed, she went and unlocked the door for him. Jay crept in, grabbed the knife, and went into Lewy's room. He said he hesitated for a moment, but when Lewy started to stir, he just launched at him and started stabbing him. After Lewy was dead, Jay stole the car and set off for Oklahoma City. He also threw the knife out of the window on the way. Kaylee had told him she would meet him there. He abandoned the car when he got there and walked to Crossroads Mall. He called Kaylee just before 7 a.m. to tell her where she could find him. She then called the police and set in motion what she thought was a fail-safe plan. Less than 24 hours after Lewy Fryer was found dead, Jay Charles was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. They then headed to Trisha's house where Kaylee was staying, and she too was arrested and later charged with first-degree murder as well. While in custody, they pulled Kaylee's phone data apart, which showed that she had called Jay right before calling 911. They knew from the autopsy and what Jay had said that Lewy had been killed at around 3 a.m. Despite her saying she was asleep, her phone data showed that she had been on the internet at that time. There was a vast amount of calls back and forth between her and Jay, and the timings he had given to the police were slowly adding up. Kaylee, still denying any involvement, asked for a lawyer right away and pleaded not guilty.
Looking ahead, a 15-year-old girl charged with her father's murder is expected to face a judge today.
Her jail calls started being closely monitored, and it was during one of these calls that it came out that Kaylee was not actually pregnant at all. It was just something she told Jay to ensure that he would follow through on killing her father and give him more of a reason to stay with her. When Jay found out that this had been a lie, detectives said he seemed genuinely upset, and after this he told them he had changed his mind about everything. He agreed to testify against Kaylee in exchange for a plea deal.
A Guthrie teenager accused of planning her father's murder will stand trial.
Investigators say 15-year-old Lewy Fryer convinced her boyfriend to do it. But now Jerry Childs is testifying against her. And Eyewitness News 5's Amanda Guerra spoke to the girl's mother, why she says Kaylee is innocent.
It's awful, I mean, especially when she's innocent.
No matter what anyone says, Tricia Wheeler Fryer believes her daughter, Kaylee, is innocent.
From what she's wrote me and what she's told me, I'm her mother. I mean, I can tell when she's lying, when she's not. I don't think she has any involvement.
Kaylee, just 15 years old, is charged with first-degree murder in her father's death. Prosecutors say she convinced her boyfriend, 21-year-old Jerry Childs, to kill her dad. Today in court, Childs told the judge the night of the murder, Kaylee left the back door open for him and told him where he could find a knife. Tricia says it's all lies.
I firmly believe that.
Why?
I mean, not because I'm just her mother, it's because I did meet Jay Childs, and everything I've seen him say on the stand is lies.
Kaylee's attorney says there's no forensic evidence tying her to the scene. He also says the prosecutor's entire argument is based on the word of a self-described gangster. But what Childs and an OSBI agent said in court was enough to convince the judge there's enough evidence to go to trial. Now Kaylee will face life in prison for her father's death.
I can't wait for the end result. The truth will come out.
In July 2010, he pleaded guilty to first-degree murder and was handed a life sentence with a chance of parole. In May 2011, the now 16-year-old Lewy Fryer went on trial, still pleading not guilty. Despite her age at the time of the crime, she was tried as an adult. She was later found guilty of first-degree murder.
Today at the Logan County Courthouse, Lewy Fryer was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole. Her attorney says even he's confused, saying Kaylee says she misses her dad.
She misses her father very much, and she has really been as flabbergasted as anybody else over this entire case.
In court today, Kaylee was hard to recognize. Once a blonde, her hair now dark, never once glancing at the crowd where her aunts and grandfather sat. This is the most emotion she's shown in front of the judge and jury, as Kaylee wiped away a few silent tears when she heard her sentence. Kaylee's attorney doesn't think a 15-year-old girl should go to a prison where the average inmate's 37.
The biggest problem is that she's going to serve a very long sentence and is likely to survive it. And my concern is, what kind of a person are we going to reintroduce into society?
We tried to speak with Lewy Fryer's family as well. They said they had nothing to say to the media, and then they said it for at least a year until her next parole hearing, they can feel safe.
Kaylee was sentenced to life in prison, also with the possibility of parole. In the state of Oklahoma, life with parole is 45 years. This means that Lewy Fryer will be 61 years old when she can apply for her parole. Jay Childs will first be eligible for parole in 2077. If he is still alive, he will be almost 90. The prosecution said that Kaylee had masterminded everything, but Jay made his own decisions that day. He was a murderer no matter what he said. He stood over an innocent man with a knife and brutally stabbed him to death, the attorney said. One of the investigators said he was still staggered that a 15-year-old could convince a 21-year-old man to commit murder for her and make him think it was the best solution to their problems. Some family members and friends wanted Kaylee to serve an entire life sentence, with one friend saying it was a good thing that two dangerous people were now off the street. There was a sense of relief because they are afraid of her. That may sound strange to be afraid of a 16-year-old girl, but they know what she's capable of, they said. But others said it was too harsh of a sentence, and Jay should have got more time over Kaylee. Kaylee's mum Tricia still believes that she is innocent. Lewy's brother Roy said, put simply, there were no winners here, but he was thankful to the jury and prosecutors for their work in the case. When she turned 18, Kaylee appealed several times, but all of them were denied. She continues to stay on the radar, however, and in 2018 she, along with 4 others, were charged in connection with a contraband conspiracy ring. Keith lives in constant conflict, saying that things affected him so much he had to go into therapy and started drinking a lot to cope. He says he has to think about her young age of 15 at the time, and whether or not she really knew the gravity of the situation, or even believed it was actually going to happen. But if it was her plan, she could have stopped it as quickly as she had started it, and how you could lie awake through something like that, pretending it wasn't happening. It is something that people believe shows a level of detachment and coldness that is very disturbing. Keith said, I'll always miss my dad, but even now I don't know how I feel about my sister. When she calls from prison, I do speak to her because I know that's what Dad would want. I haven't visited her, but despite what she did, I still have a sense of love for her, because I know Dad would never have given up on her, no matter what. I like to think I could maybe forgive her, because I genuinely don't think she understood the full consequences of her actions, and the hurt it would cause. Keith said, I loved my dad and I always will. I'll take his morals and convictions with me. My dad was only 5'2", but he was the only 5'2" person I'd ever look up to. My dad was, and still is, the perfect role model to me.